A 7-year-old BBC article has just been removed from Google search pages in Europe, sparking fierce debate about a recent European ruling that the move was based on. With me now to discuss this is the FT's chief business commentator, John Gapper. John, let's just take a step back and talk about the European Court of Justice ruling that this move was based on. What is it, this so-called right to be forgotten?
Well, the ruling, which came in May, says that search engines like Google, if an individual applies to them to remove a link to an article which the individual thinks is irrelevant or no longer relevant, Google has to consider whether or not to remove the link. And unless there's a public interest offence, it must take the link down. The underlying article that the individual is unhappy about stays on the web. It's just the search link to it.
Okay, and let's just be clear about the actual criteria for this. So this is if the information is said to be inaccurate, irrelevant, or no longer relevant.
That's correct.
But it only applies to pages in Europe. So if I was in the US searching on google.com, I could still find these pages.
That's correct. And in fact, you don't have to be in the US to search it. You can simply search the US version of Google and you would still find all the links that, including the link that has been removed.
Right, and in this case, with this BBC article, this is a blog post by Robert Peston, and it's about a former Merrill Lynch executive. Is this an example of a misinterpretation of the ECJ ruling?
Well, this article concerns Stan O'Neill, a former Merrill Lynch executive. It doesn't seem as though Mr. O'Neill himself complained. It may well have simply been one of the commenters on the blog article in question. So at that point, clearly Google had to make some decision about whether or not to remove this particular link. Now there are other links that still lead to the article. So Google's got a lot of rather difficult decisions to make, and the law itself is a bit vague and puts a lot of onus on Google to make this broad decision about what's in the public interest.
So it sounds like there's a lot of ambiguity actually about how to apply the ruling in practice. But what does this mean for journalism? Is journalism supposed to be protected, and arguably is it being protected because the article still exists on the BBC's own site?
All it does is put some sort of little barrier between the article and an individual who might be searching online for it. So it's a rather peculiar form of censorship. It's quite limited, rather confusing, and frankly rather ineffective.
What does this mean for Google? I mean, how much of this onus is on them, as you say, to actually decide what should and shouldn't be removed?
Well, the law, frankly, came as a surprise to all sides, the broadness of the ruling. And Google is basically having to make it up and decide how to apply the law, because there's no case law. The law is very broad in its application. And Google, which clearly has enough money to do it, has got to hire a lot of legal workers to sift through all of the application and then start making decisions. At some point, Google's going to refuse somebody and it will actually go to a court of law, but we're a way off that yet.
Do you think more of this will happen? Are we likely to see more of these, I guess, contentious removals of what is classified as this personal data that someone, we don't know who yet, but someone has requested to be removed?
Well, I think we are seeing thousands of such requests. The current incidents do, however, show that there's a bit of a risk. If somebody applies to have their article removed, Google notifies the journalistic organisation that wrote the article, and they may well be unhappy about it, make a fuss about it, and reprint the article online. So you could actually end up drawing more attention to yourself. And frankly, the entire situation is rather unpredictable, rather confusing, and extremely complex, and we really don't know. We're literally in the first few days of what might work. And also, we might see a change in the law.
And just finally touching on that point quickly, do you think Google might be a little bit pleased with the outrage, the debate that this move has caused? Because they were, as we say, they were against the ruling in the first place.
Yes, I mean, I think Google would be very happy that there's a lot of fuss about it. There's a lot of criticism about the way the law is being applied. It may even covertly have been trying to encourage some of it, because all the responsibility is on Google and it wants to paint itself as being in a position of relative innocence. So frankly, yes, Google will be perfectly happy.
Okay, well, lots more to discuss there. Thank you, John. And for more on this, go to ft.com.